all good stories have suffering. So, just be forewarned out there. It starts off a little bit challenging and it grows from there.
83% of Americans identify as not very happy, which can hold you back and negatively affect your relationships and your business. On this podcast, we discuss the proven steps to happiness so you can restore balance and rekindle your joy.
Welcome to another episode of How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. I hope you are having a fantastic day. I sure am. I got 4 hours of pickleball and an hour of yoga, so I am feeling amazing today. And we have an amazing show in store. We're going to talk about spiritual awakening, happiness, joy with our guest from beautiful sunny California, Joe Hehn. How are you, my friend?
Dude, cannot complain. Very, very, very good on this side of the country. I got a little bit of self-care time too, and I have a 2.5-year-old, and we dropped him off at school, and he didn't cry as much today. So little progress, and we're taking it as it comes. So I'm in good spirits and really excited about being here, and a big fan of your show. And just happy to help some folks out there and share some stories.
Heck yeah. Yeah. When we were talking offline beforehand, we were saying if you live in the United States, you really shouldn't be complaining about anything.
Yeah, yeah.
There's so much to be grateful for, little things, small things, and gratefulness is such a huge part of happiness and joy. So, anyway, Joe, I have heard you have a pretty incredible story. So, let's start there. What is this amazing story of yours?
So it is, all good stories have suffering. So, just be forewarned out there. It starts off a little bit challenging and it grows from there. But like any good coming of age story, we've got to start somewhere. And I was a kind of a corporate soldier back in the day, 2010, 11, 12. And I had a loving fiance. We got married in 2011. I had a great setup with family and friends, great social lifestyle. I was living in Chicago, working on Michigan Avenue, having a great kind of life. But in my mind, there was a lot of fault and flaws that I was finding, drumming up anxiety and stress, and just kind of seeing that this was like the way things go. And I would talk to other people, and they'd have a ton to complain about. And you get humbled real quick in life with God, the universe, the powers that be, well, just life in general. And that's what happened, is that we found out one day, less than a year after our wedding, that my wife had been diagnosed with cancer. And so we hit the ground running, seeking treatment options, going around the country, trying to stay away from some traditional ones. And we found something after a few months, a clinical trial in Chicago. We made some really great progress, but unfortunately, it kind of all unraveled one day when she went into the hospital because she wasn't feeling well. We thought it was food poisoning, and she was already cleared in remission. And then they found dozens of lesions and tumors in her brain. And from there, it was all hands on deck. So we moved in with my folks, just kind of abandoned our life in Chicago and had to kind of really jump into the full-time caretaker while managing my corporate job and just flying through that space, trying to be everything I could for her, and just grasp onto any little string of hope and faith, and be that night for her while she was battling this tremendous war against cancer. And that lasted for about 10 months until one fateful day I found myself in the hospital room, clutching her hands, begging her not to leave me, and having to pull her off life support. We were surrounded by family. It was insanely surreal and spiritual and tremendously hard. And from there, something was ignited. The pain was so significant after the fact. The first few days, you just don't even know what's going on, and you're kind of reeling. And I got some encouragement. I felt like I was getting some signs from her. I knew she wasn't here with me on earth, but I was getting visitations in dreams and people coming to relate messages that they had in dreams. A medium coming out of the woodwork there, who was a friend of hers. And I established a friendship with this medium Tanya, a beautiful, loving woman. She wasn't charging me. She just kind of reached out to check in on me because she felt that Jessica was working through her. And my analytical soldier corporate mind felt like this is not right. But my grieving heart, my spiritual grieving heart felt like this is everything I need to know and hear right now to like have some kind of direction to be able to heal and grow from here because Jess and I had a business together. We had just been married. We had a whole life planned out. We had all these wonderful things. And when your partner passes away, not only do you lose everything she was to you, you lose everything you were to her. And that's where we put a lot of the basis of our identity of who we are being a husband and a protector and a provider and a businessman. I quit my corporate gig. So I was left with nothing, just tatters of a life that once was. And from there, I embarked on a kind of global journey of traveling around the world. And I was exploring spirituality. I was volunteering in South America, teaching martial arts to children and women in need, and trying to teach English and suffer, minimize my suffering and understand what my mind was going through. And the whole while, she was kind of guiding me and giving me these like synchronicities, these signs, these encouragements, these things that don't really make sense when you're looking at them from an analytical viewpoint, but they make a lot of sense when you let go of that. And one of the things that she assigned for me, in a sense, with the medium was that she wanted me to write a book, to tell a story. And so that always stuck with me as I was traveling. And so I was continuing to travel all through South America, volunteering, staying at hostels and buses, and doing all the crazy epic adventure one does when you're kind of got a minimal budget and traveling. And then I kind of came up to my end point where whatever I was doing was not working, and I was just deteriorating away physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And I got really, really sick in Bolivia. And so I decided that I needed to go home, back to Chicago,
So,
which
so,
I
so,
did.
so, Joe, you
Yeah.
started this journey to kind of start the soul searching and awakening, and you
Yes.
tried it for a period of time, and it just nothing. It wasn't working. Is that
It was not that it wasn't working. It was the approach wasn't working in the beginning of kind of
right?
traveling, helping to volunteer with others. I figured out that I needed to help myself. Is that I got to this crux of like, I can't do this. It's not sustainable. I'm having real bad thoughts. I don't want to die, but I don't want to live type kind of
Mm.
place and state of mind. And so I went back to Chicago, couldn't stay there, ended up moving to Costa Rica and living there for a long while and just working on my mind and self-care, understanding, reading a lot of religions and spiritual texts and understandings, and then just kind of gaining from my own self-awareness. And that kind of sparked that this is what I'm going to do now. And so I drove back from Costa Rica all the way to Chicago, kind of engorging myself on all the spiritual stuff to understand my mind. And I was getting a really good grasp. Then I started touring Europe and doing it in Africa and Asia and trekking through the Himalayas and meditating in the Sahara and volunteering in Tibet and doing all this stuff that was super spiritual. And every country and culture that I would go to, I would kind of align with their faith system to learn as much as I could from it, like studying Buddhism in Nepal and Tibet and
Wow,
Taoism in China while I was
wow.
touring there, and Sufism in the Middle East. And so I'm just kind of living these like different lives in different continents and countries, all learning lessons while my wife was guiding me from the beyond.
Did you say you drove from Costa Rica to Chicago?
Yeah, in an old 1971 Land Rover that I bought in Costa Rica, and I took a few months to drive back, and it broke down every other day. But you learn so much about how to ask for help and get rejected, and you just get guided. And I did that, and with a safari vehicle, and it was an epic adventure, probably one of the greatest that I've had adventure wise.
So how
But
long how long is this journey from the time that you moved out of the country into South America until you got back to Chicago? How long are we talking about?
So I would take little stints and come back to the States to kind of regroup and center. But this was probably a 4 or 5 year experience. And I was also working, writing a little bit loosely. And then I started finally running out of money because, you're not spending a lot when you're traveling these countries if you know how to do it correctly. I was spending way less than I was just living what a normal life would be in Chicago.
Wow.
But it's you still have to have some funds, and we have to start making a life for ourselves. So I started consulting with medical devices, and that enabled me to work for myself, kind of have my own consulting business, but then take these big trips where I would go to India for 2 months and do that, and then come back and continue working and stuff. So that all happened from like 2014 to about 2019. So about 5 years until I kind of stopped with the big sabbaticals, and I just gained a lot of momentum. I started helping people figure their own minds and hearts out and own spiritual journeys in like 2016, 2017. And that's when I started kind of just coaching friends and loved ones, just people who could use it, and to help make some significance of their suffering, and then kind of help them alleviate that from their state of being. Yeah.
So it sounded like you had issues before your wife's passing, and then those
Hmm.
issues were probably exacerbated. A lot of times, the traumatic things are just bring up old stuff, right? So was there a
It was
time?
actually the opposite, to be honest. So those things were like surface minutia, like grievances at work and this kind of stuff. There was like trauma from being a kid. It wasn't anything significant, but like, anxiety and stuff like that. But the loss of all my identities and Jess and everything just kind of like obliterated all that other stuff. And I was able to see that suffering is suffering. It's kind of like a pain scale. It's attachment to life being other than what life is. And so I was able to make a lot of understanding of what suffering is mindset wise. And that actually helped me with the other stuff, kind of be like, that stuff is not really that significant. And especially like caring for Jess too, and dealing with mortality and her almost dying so many times, that it also obliterated those other like previous anxieties. So it was the other way around. It kind of like humbled that stuff. But then when everything kind of started boiling down and settling, I saw my mind return back into those anxieties, but I had the tools and
Hmm.
awareness to let them go. And so that's where I started gaining a lot of momentum.
So you mentioned your childhood wasn't. You didn't use the words that bad, but you said small things. What were those small things that happened in your childhood?
Just tremendous anxieties and fears around school. I went to a private school, so small group of kids, bullying, and all the stuff of where you start going into this space that you equate to being insanely uncomfortable for you. And so then you're starting to equate not just that space, but social spaces. And so you built these insecurities about having to kind of, stand up and fight for yourself and prove yourself, and you develop complexes and based on insecurities. So all this stuff was like made aware, and I was able to make a tremendous amount of like self-guided progress through that. But you don't know until you know. And so Jess passing kind of was my wake up call to the power of perspective.
So, Joe, I want to hear about like what you learned, like what were the big breakthroughs. But before we get there, all these years, I mean, you studied some incredible places and some incredible, I don't know what you philosophies, maybe the
Sure.
best way to say it. Was there a day that kind of everything clicked, or there was a turning point? And if so, what happened on that day, like to kind of reset you?
Sure. So it wasn't a day. It was like taking a course in university where you're learning different lessons, and then all of this stuff is adding up to kind of a one main lesson, that perspective determines the quality of your circumstance, not the actual circumstance. So a lot of people are like, oh, work sucks because this is happening and that's happening. It's not the circumstance that's giving you suffering and harm, it's the way you're looking at it. And this is taken with the fact that we have to have basic needs like food, water, shelter, safety have to be set. If we're fearing for our life because we're being chased down by dogs or something, we're not kind of worried about perspective. We actually have a threat. But for most people, a lot of Americans, as you stated, we can look at our circumstance in a way that will empower us. And I call that, this is my program that I use to develop, with executives and corporate teams and individuals, called the higher perspective. So we can shift the way that we're looking at our life so that it makes us feel good and happy. So it's kind of like going from looking at a black and white picture to a color
Yeah.
picture. It will bring about emotions of pleasure and joy and radiance and beauty, because we're looking at it differently. But the actual picture is not that different. What we're looking at, it's just the vibrancy and the radiance that makes us feel some really empowering emotions. And we can do that through perspective.
Yeah. So, okay, tell me if you. I'm going to say this a different way, and tell me if you agree. It's like the event happens, and we attach a meaning to the event instead of just
Mhm.
seeing it as the event.
Exactly. And so you could train yourself to recognize one, this is just a neutral event, or you could train yourself to be like, well, this is a positive event if I'm looking at it from this perspective. And then I'm either going to feel kind of like a victim or a prisoner if I look at it in a negative or lower perspective. A neutral perspective is nice because it's just peaceful, or you're indifferent, but the positive, higher perspective will actually make you feel some good, happy feelings. So for people getting started, if they're kind of accustomed to looking at things through that half glass empty perspective, we're going to jump all the way to positive because neutral doesn't have enough of a pull. So we can look at it from a positive perspective by training our mind how to do that. And then that'll gain some momentum. It's training reactivating your reticular activating system in a different way. It's training new neuroplasticity. So the science backs up the spirituality, but our egos, our thinking minds don't work that way. So we have to come in through self-awareness and go, all right, how am I thinking? How am I looking? And how's that making me feel? Is this working for me? If I don't feel good, then it's not. So now how can I retrain or condition my mind to look at my life differently so that I feel good? And that's what we can master. And then your life will experience a nice, significant shift. And from there, if you keep it habitual, these practices, these tools, these habits, you will start making a transformation of your experience. So
I love
it's
it.
a lot to unpack, but you
No,
know,
it makes sense. I have a mentor that says that he wants to lead a meaningless life, and you hear that, and you're like, "What does that mean?" It's he wants to see every event as just the event and not attach a meaning to it. Because if you think about people with anxiety and depression and alcoholism and addiction, the list goes on and on and on. It's what I've seen in all of my studies and work is that it usually comes from decades ago, where as a child something happened and they created a
you know,
meaning, because so much of the human species don't believe they're not enough. Well, that we weren't born not thinking we were enough, but something happened where we were bullied at school or pressured, or our parents did this, and we put a meaning to the event to help us get through that stressful time. It actually worked for us as a 6 year old. My dad's not showing up to my soccer games. He must not love me. I must be bad. So now I control it, because if I can just be good, he'll show up to my soccer games. But at 47, like I was, I'm buying a 42-foot boat, trying to take it to the Caribbean to prove my worth. It doesn't work out so good. So,
it's
you
like
know,
staying in a child's seat your entire life.
yeah,
You outgrow it. And it's like, well, this was once safe, but now it's actually ruining my experience because I'm cramped into this child seat and it's actually not keeping me safe. It's causing a lot of harm. And it's just that's the conditioning. So perfectly said there, but we can reprogram the mind
yes.
to look at things differently so that we become proud of who we are, so that we become really confident with our authenticity. And so the program that I speak about, where I'm working with eBay and Salesforce and some other big companies, and it's all about shifting to the higher perspective. And I call it GAPS is the acronym. Okay. So it's GAP triple S. And what it means is that when we are not present, like your mentor said, when we're not present of the current moment, we're experiencing gaps in presence, which brings suffering because we're all up in our heads wondering what this person did and why that's relevant to me, and making moves and manipulations and overthinking and toxic, mindset and self-sabotage, all that stuff, right? So if we can get away from thinking and come to presence, then we experience kind of a salvation there, our liberation, because we're just taking in the current moment with our senses. And it could just be an indifferent, peaceful moment, but there's no threat. So we're not having suffering. We're at what I call our line of peace. And that's where we want to be. And so through that, the GAPS acronym is, you're going to like the first one, gratitude, authenticity, positive projection. So we're thinking, seeing, visualizing good things about our future, not the specifics of how and when that will come about, but just seeing ourselves broadcasting that positive future experience. And then surrender, releasing attachment to life being other than what life is. And then self aware, which is the most important. We have to be self aware, and through self awareness, self care. We got to take care of our mind and our bodies so that we can actually work on reconditioning our mind. Because if we are sick and we are tired and we are cranky, you're not going to be able to retrain your mind and your perspective. Okay, so those are the pillars of the higher perspective, and through that, you're going to experience a shift. And to take it one step further than what your mentor mentioned, is I want to experience a meaningless life. Is I love this analogy that this Japanese sage samurai would tell people. He said, I would envision that there is a samurai sword, a katana, hovering inches above my neck, ready to slice down at any moment. And people be like, that's insane. You're morbid. That's crazy. But in actuality, what it did is it took away what he would take for granted. And it made his eyes expand to like, if this is my last moment, this is my last breath, how much am I going to
Wow.
appreciate it? So you're going beyond peace into almost sacred experience of gratitude, because this could be the last kiss, the last time you hug that loved one, that last time you drive your car that you like, the last walk you have. And from there, you're taking it above that line of peace to joy, bliss, and gratitude.
I love
So
it.
that is through the higher perspective.
I love it. I want to hear exactly how you do this, but if you're listening to this and you're wondering if you have some of these programming issues that are affecting your life, your finances, your health, your business, whatever, your relationships, I didn't have self awareness. If you want to get self awareness and figure out if you have some of these things, do yourself a favor and just take 3 minutes out of your life and go to unlocklimitlessyou.com/quiz and take our 3 minute self love quiz. It will give you the awareness that could lead you on a journey that could change your life in ways that you might not even be able to imagine. So, Joe, back to the gaps. Love it. Love the analogy. Love all the words in there. How do you? So, you work with. Do you work with people that have like depression, anxiety, or are you just working with folks who are trying to like get to the next level in business?
Almost everybody has a little bit of depression and anxiety, and everybody I've met in business has depression and anxiety pretty much. So it's just about the extent of that. But for me, I work with individuals who are looking to experience a really big transformation in the quality of their life and their mind, and then corporations, companies who want to recover from maybe a reorg or strengthen the performance of their team, decrease turnover, elevate employee satisfaction and performance and just fulfillment, honestly. And so it depends on the approach, but I basically walk people through those different pillars, and they're broken down to all these micro pillars and verticals. But we're learning that gratitude is so important because it's actually just looking at the reality as opposed to the non-reality. Okay, because a lot of times when you're suffering and you're getting anxious and stressed, it's over things we can't control. So you're looking at a non-reality, like the way things could be or should be, and desiring that, as opposed to the reality of your life. And so this is what Buddha was describing when he said suffering is rooted in desire. It's the desire for our life to be the fantasy as opposed to the reality. So gratitude helps us build momentum into seeing the reality for what it is, and then feeling some peace, some pleasure, some joy. And authenticity is showing up and saying, you know what? I didn't have the confidence as a kid. I got bullied. I got beaten up. I didn't have a great relationship with my dad, but I'm still good enough as I am. And it's beating that drum and doing the things to feel confident with who you are. Because everyone listening right now out there is perfect, perfect, just as you are. But the analogy is like technology. Is technology perfect right now, Brad?
No.
No. But is technology the best it's ever been?
Yes.
With tomorrow coming, it's going to get better. And so we're present within today saying, I'm the best I've ever been. And tomorrow, if tomorrow comes, I'll be even better. And that's the evolution of self-love. And it thwarts arrogance, and it comes down to humility and compassion for myself and others. And authenticity is compromised of confidence and composure and calmness and compassion there. So the list goes on, but we walk people through that higher perspective, how to visualize success, how to achieve goals, task management. I heard a previous gentleman on your podcast, I think it was Blaine, was
Yeah.
it talking about habits, how to do this so that we're backing action with kind of the metaphysical manifestation, law of attraction, and spiritual techniques to know a life of abundance in the future as well as now. And then becoming self-aware, recognizing we are not our thoughts, but our thoughts have a power to influence our reality. So can we program those thoughts to make us feel emotionally attached to something? And so the list goes on, but we're walking people through these different pillars so that they become self-aware, and then they become sustainable in being their own coach, their own mentor, just by understanding what they're thinking and whether it's serving them or not. And if it's not, here's what to do, here's how to replace it. And then people experience a shift in a few months, and then from there it becomes sustainable.
I love it. It's what we do. It's unlike traditional therapy where, you go every week for years and years. What you do and what I do is we give folks tools so that they can be their own therapist no matter what comes.
100%.
When you can understand the concepts that you teach and I teach, you don't ever really need a therapist again because you know how to deal with everything. It's quite amazing. Like, we're on a journey forever, and I have arguments and disagreements and conflict with my girlfriend. But the way that I handle them, knowing that I'm not enough and that I'm fighting for my worthiness, it's completely different. So now I have these tools, and with the tools you can do anything. So tell us about your book as
Well
we're
said,
as,
man.
as we're, as we're wrapping up. Tell us about this book you got.
So yeah, the book that I was assigned to write when Jessica was like, tell a story, write a book. And by the way, all these years, everything that I've done, now I'm getting married in 2 months. We have a 2.5-year-old. I'm living a dream life in San Diego. We've got an amazing house out in Carlsbad. I run my own business. I'm helping people all across the world. This stuff works. And so I've created this opportunity, but I didn't know any of this stuff. And so the journey led to this abundance. And now I'm here on the podcast, helping other folks out there. But I felt like I had to live many different lives in order to kind of realize this really beautiful space that I occupy now. And that is a reflection of the novel I wrote called Dreams of Antiquity, where basically there's a king and a queen. They're super in love, soulmates. The queen falls ill and passes, and the king can't live without her. And so he passes and reincarnates into another body, and learning from that culture, that faith, that circumstance of his life. And then he passes from there and reincarnates again, becoming a shepherd in Tibet, or a kung fu master in China. And he keeps reincarnating into these lives, all the while his wife is guiding him, and he is going through his soulful evolution, learning from the different stuff as he progresses. And so it's called Dreams of Antiquity, The Awakening. And I'm doing it's out there now, it's doing really well, but I'm doing some final edits to make it that much better. So that should be out shortly. So really cool book. And then I'm writing another self-help book about the higher perspective, so that people can check out my program and start doing this for themselves, being equipped with everything they need to do to experience their own transformation.
Yeah, no matter where you are in your life and how bad you think things may be, you're literally weeks away from complete transformation. You don't have to
Yes.
go on a 5-year
No.
journey like Joe. You don't have
Mhm.
to go on 30 years of therapy like I did and 60 different marriage counselors. No, if you know this stuff, if you can just live in what Joe's been saying, I mean, change can happen really, really, really fast. And
100%.
it's no need for drugs or years of therapy.
Yeah, especially with science and spirituality kind of coming together in this age. We have everything we need. So you are not alone. There's a lot of resources, and you don't have to figure it out for yourself, working with people like Brad, myself, others out there, self-help books. But just make it your lifestyle to heal and to grow, and you will never look back, and you are worth it. Know that, but you have the power, and we believe in you. So you can do it.
Amen. Joe, what's the biggest lesson that you've learned in your entire life?
um, Man, that's tough. I would probably say that we are all much closer than we know. We recognize that we kind of individualize ourselves, but at the end of the day, at the end of all of this, we are all the same. And that is a divine place that we come from, and that where we're returning to. And so that I believe that each and every one of us has that divine DNA of God within us, and living by that truth and knowing that I'm a sacred individual, it makes my life and every moment within it, with everyone in it, very, very beautiful and blessed and sacred.
I agree 100%. Where can people find your book, and where can people reach you if they want to work with you?
My website, joe-hehn, HEHN.com is the website. You can have everything you need there. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube. I'm launching a whole new Be Happy at Work YouTube channel, my book, my wellness coaching and programs, and I do one-on-one coaching as well. And then Amazon is or Barnes and Nobles for Dreams of Antiquity, The Awakening. But joe-hehn.com is where you can get everything, and email me and just ask questions too. I'm always here to help others.
Love it, Joe. That was awesome, man. Thank you for parting your wisdom on us and sharing your amazing story with us.
I appreciate you for having me, man. Thank you so much. I feel like, again, we could stay here for another 20 hours, just not eating, not breathing, just talking and loving all this energy. So thanks. It was awesome.
You're welcome. So that concludes another episode of How to Be Happy for Entrepreneurs. As you guys have heard before, I'm on a mission to help 1 million people radically transform their lives by getting rid of these self-limiting beliefs that are buried, hidden in their subconscious mind. And I certainly can't do that alone. So I need your help. I spend a lot of time, a lot of money on this podcast. If you can just do me a small favor and share it, rate it, review it, anything you can do to help get this message out to the world to make it a better place, I would be forever grateful. So until next time, love heals all.
Hit subscribe if you don't want to miss out on more life-changing content. And if you're struggling, you don't have to. Go to bradchandler.com/contact. There, you can join the Facebook community of like-minded entrepreneurs, and you'll see a button to schedule your freedom and happiness call. See you on the next episode.